I'm here with Laura Klein, an experienced engineer and designer. She is the author of UX for Lean Startups, and her goal is to help lean startups learn more about their customers so that they can build better products faster. Hi, Laura.
Hi.
So help me understand why I'm often frustrated with various experiences. I know there are services that I need to use, like paying my mortgage or paying my phone company bill, that just drive me crazy how frustrating the experience can be. So what are these folks doing? Why don't they understand how important user experience is?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, especially for things like paying your mortgage, because when you think about it, that should be a solved problem. There are actually a lot of people who are doing that really well. And so it feels like, I'm a mortgage company, I'm trying to put something online. Seems like I should just be able to go out there and copy some decent patterns that already exist, right? But they don't seem to do that. There are a lot of reasons why this falls apart. I think that one of the biggest ones is that there's just a process problem. They don't understand how to learn whether or not the thing that they're putting out there works. They're not doing usability testing. They're not doing user research. They don't understand who it is who's actually using their product. Sometimes with big companies like mortgage companies or banks or any of these larger companies, I think what happens is they already have processes in place for doing specific things. And so when they go online, they'll take their current process and they'll just move it online. They'll make it digital.
Right.
I see this a lot of times. If you ever try to do anything with some government websites, you'll try to go and do something and they'll say, here's a page of forms that you can download and print out and sign and send in. And you know what? Actually, that's a bonus. Like, that's better than it used to be when you had to, go find it at the DMV or call somebody at City Hall and find the correct form. So that's a bonus to have it online. But they're still not thinking of it in terms of this. We're not just taking the form and putting it online. What we're doing is we're actually creating a new way to pay our mortgage, or we're creating a new way to perform this basic action, and we're creating it in a way that's natural to whatever the context is that I as a user am using. So when people actually do start thinking about things like context, I think you get some really great features. Like, for example, with my bank, I can take a picture of a check with my mobile phone and deposit it that way.
Right. And who would have thought that was possible? And that's really innovative thinking on their part.
It really is, and it feels. I was laughing like, this feels like the future. Right. It's absolutely the future because I can do this, and it's something that wouldn't have been thought of if you'd just taken the old process of, okay, now you have to fill out the little form and you have to deposit, you have to hand it to somebody. There's a physical check. They just said, no, we don't have to do that anymore. We have cameras and computers. Let's just do it that way.
Yeah, I think I drink more Starbucks coffee because their app is so good.
Oh, do you?
It's like you just hold up your phone and there's the payment and it's done.
That is a terrible thing for you to have told me. I need to not know that.
Right, because it gets a little dangerous with all that caffeine. So a lot of what you're doing is sort of evangelizing what people can do to make their experiences better. So maybe I should send a copy of your book to my mortgage company.
I strongly recommend that you send a copy of my book to everybody that you know.
Okay. We'll work on that. So often companies do understand the value and importance of good experiences for their customers. So what's the first step in sort of creating an effective or engaging UX?
Knowing who your target audience is, really understanding them, and understanding what problem you're solving for them. So, and that a lot of times doesn't even feel like design, right? I come in and I start talking to people and they say, oh, it's design. You're going to help me fix this thing that I already have, or, oh, you're going to color it in, or, oh, you're going to, fix the font. No. So what I say is, I need to understand who your user is. Sometimes people ask me to come in and critique their product from a design perspective, and I say, well, am I your user? Is it for, senior UX designers who live in the Bay Area? Is that your goal audience? Because if so, I can absolutely critique it. I will tell you exactly what I think is wrong with it. But you probably don't care what I think. You probably care what your users think and who your users are. And so once you truly understand who you're building for and you truly understand what problem you're solving for them, that takes care of about 60% of the usability and user research problems that I see.
Interesting.
Yeah, you make a much better UX for when you know who you're actually building it for.
Okay. So a lot of what we've talked about are sort of web services or even mobile apps, but can you take the principles that you're talking about and apply them to physical devices? I'm a huge Fitbit lover. So, I mean, how would you, if you're working on a hardware device, whether it's a medical device or some sort of fitness application with a piece of hardware, can you use those principles?
I think it's even more important because with all of those things that you just mentioned, there's this added realm of complicated context in which the user is using it. And it's not even just technology devices, right? Have you ever walked up to a door, grabbed the handle, and pulled, and then realized that it was actually a push door?
Absolutely.
Right, yeah,
This
everybody's done that. Yeah, exactly. You feel like an idiot because, I just tried to open a door and thought it was locked. But
3
no,
times,
it's really
right?
just yeah, exactly. And, everybody's looking at you like, oh, who's that stupid person? But you're not. You're reacting to a context clue that is there, which is there is a handle, I pull handles, right? You don't know. You've never encountered this particular door before. Maybe you have and you forgot because you encounter a lot of doors. But unless you have the visual cue that this is a push door, that's not your natural inclination. So anytime you have any kind of human interaction with something and in context, and this is something that, for example, new people might be coming and encountering this thing, there are all kinds of clues that you can put into it to either make the user experience totally seamless or really confusing and embarrassing. And the great thing to remember is that your goal is to make it so that people don't notice opening the door. Because I don't want to open a door. I want to go into the room, right? Everybody always says, nobody buys a drill, they buy a hole, right? I don't care about the interface. I care about the end product as a user. And I think we really need to think about that when we're building any kind of thing. So you mentioned the Fitbit, right? Fitbit's got to be something that I'm comfortable wearing or carrying with me or having with me all the time, or it doesn't really work as I'd expect it to. And if it's not something, if it's a 5-pound thing that I have to carry around with me, that's a non-starter, right? You have to think about the context that I'm going to be wearing it in and where I'm going to be comfortable having it with me.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, but what's the level that you need to go to? A lot of times, in our own business at O'Reilly, we will instruct people in certain ways, and we think we're giving them absolutely the clear instructions and how they do that. And time again, we'll get sort of similar questions. So. And we say, gee, could we do that in a different way? Are we really approaching our customers in the wrong way? I mean, how do you know where that line is where, like, people just don't get it or we're doing it wrong? I mean, how do you figure that out?
Well, in general, I'd say that if people aren't getting it, you're doing it wrong. And that's actually something that's very hard for a lot of founders, especially, to hear. It's very hard for designers to hear.
It seems so clear to me.
So obvious. Remember, you have the curse of knowledge. You, especially if you're building a product and it's your product, you know everything there is to know about the product. You know what features exist. I mean, something even as simple as, you know that a particular feature exists somewhere in your product. So if pressed, you could find that feature and perform a task with it. Let's say I'm a user, I'm coming in. I don't know anything about your product. I don't know that that feature exists. I'm not necessarily going to go search for that feature for a way to perform a particular task because I don't even know that that's possible. You haven't introduced me to the concept that this is even a possibility for me. So I think that's something that people say, well, why couldn't they just find it? It's right here. It's under this menu called miscellaneous, and it's 3 levels down, and you click 4 times, and then you're there. And you think, well, why in God's name would anybody do that? You would because you know it exists.
So you have to divorce yourself from almost your knowledge base,
you have to just, and honestly, I think that's pretty much impossible. Even knowing that you know too much, you can't unknow it, which is why you constantly have to observe people. You mentioned you get a lot of the same questions over and over. I think it's worth keeping track of those questions, understanding what categories of questions they are, understand what kinds of people are asking the questions and what they're really trying to understand by those questions.
Does the A/B testing methodology fit in there? Is that something you do?
I do a lot of A/B testing, and I'm a big fan because I firmly believe that design is not art. I love art. I think art is fantastic. I think when I design something, it is not art. It is trying to solve a problem. It is trying to fulfill a purpose. The problem is often, there's a business need, right, that I'm trying to solve, which is, I want my company to make more money. I want people to be more engaged with my product. I want more people to register for it or to use it or to buy it, and then I want people to use it, not just because I think that would be great if they used my product, but because if they're using my product, they're probably more likely to give my company money. That's very important to me.
Right. That's a goal
fundamentally,
of yours. Yes.
that is my business need, is to get more revenue. Fantastic. So I think with A/B testing, we can measure to see whether changes we make to our product solve that business need. Now, it doesn't tell you why the feature that you just built succeeded or failed. It doesn't tell you what you should do instead of that feature. It doesn't tell you, that feature is now perfect or that feature is terrible. All it does is it tells you that this thing that I created contributed to my bottom line or didn't. And either way, I still have to do qualitative testing to understand why that happened. So the framework for it is quantitative data, that's metrics, analytics, A/B. Quantitative tells you what's happening. Qualitative tells you why it's happening.
Okay, that's a good distinction. So I know that you've done some work with the Lean methodology. So you could describe a little bit how that fits in with good user experience design, because you could probably do it outside of the Lean model, but I'm assuming you're getting some efficiency by using the Lean methodology.
Yeah, it's interesting because when Lean came out, I think a lot of UX designers, especially user-centered designers or people who practice design thinking, looked at some of the ideas in Lean Startup and said, yeah, so we've been doing this. Oh, you want us to talk to users? Great. We've been doing that for a while now. We know how to do that. That's fantastic. Oh, you want us to iterate and prototype and those sorts of things. So all of those very much were a part of user-centered design and very much are a part of the Lean Startup methodology, and that's fantastic. You have to fundamentally understand that the Lean methodology is about learning. It's about this build, measure, learn loop where we're constantly iterating, we're constantly releasing something, understanding how it affects people, how people use it, and then measuring the impact and then changing the behavior based on what we've learned. So that fits in very well with user research and interaction design, because I feel like the UX portion of it, that's very much part of that build and measure loop.
Right.
The research tells you what you should build, and it also helps you measure qualitatively the things that you have built.
Right, because you're never done.
You're never done. Oh,
right.
No, absolutely not. There's a reason it's a loop. It's not a straight line. It's not a waterfall. Waterfall always drove me nuts because waterfall implied that at the bottom there was the end.
Right.
Oh, you're at the bottom. You're done. There's nowhere else to go.
Right.
No, then you have to go back up to the top of the waterfall, which is really very hard. Whereas, if it's a nice little loop, you're just back to the beginning. You just continue to build, measure, and learn.
All right. So that's a good place to end the discussion here, talking about it never ends. You really need to continue to listen to your customers.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Laura.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Great.